Hello everybody, my name is Dylan Ton, and I'm gonna give you guys all a persuasive speech on why vaccinations should be required in America. Let's get started. So here are my three main points that I will be discussing throughout this speech. So number one, vaccines save lives. Number two is my rebuttal, and it says that vaccine mandates violate civil liberties. And number three, vaccines eradicate diseases forever. So can you guys guess how many American deaths could have been prevented this year from vaccines? That number is 50,000. According to the National Foundation for Infectious Diseases, these lives were lost because they chose not to be vaccinated. So number one, vaccinations save lives. So according to an article analyzing COVID-19 deaths, the quote says that from the first authorizations in December 2020 through March 2022, COVID-19 vaccinations estimated to have averted roughly 2.3 million deaths and 66.2 million additional infections, per the analysis. Further, the push for shots in arms was found to have prevented 17 million hospitalizations in the US. So this quote is saying that in the past year and a half when we had COVID-19 vaccines, it prevented 2.3 million additional deaths and saved 17 million people from going to hospitals, right? So this means that the healthcare system, it was not oversaturated, and that the amount of people were not over capacity in these hospitals. So as you can see from this chart right here, the blue shows the amount of unvaccinated people and the green shows the amount of vaccinated people. So on the top portion, it shows that every month there are more and more people getting vaccinated, which is a great thing. And on the bottom, it shows the share of adult COVID-19 deaths per month. And you can see each month it's a majority blue, which means unvaccinated. So there are more people that are dying from COVID-19 that are unvaccinated than there are vaccinated. So, according to a study conducted by 11 world-renowned scientists, the number of future deaths averted corresponding to the cohorts vaccinated in 2016 to 2030 for all 10 antigens in 41 middle-income countries is estimated to be approximately 36 million. Exhibit 1. Vaccines for measles, hepatitis B, and human papillomavirus accounted for the larger share of averted deaths, 61%, 18%, and 7% respectively. So this quote is saying that there was a study done by 11 scientists, right? And they wanted to see what would happen to these third world countries if they got the amount of vaccinations that they were supposed to get. And their estimate was that there would be 36 million lives saved. So on the bottom you can see the data that they collected, and on the left it shows the deaths averted, which added up to 36 million, and in the middle it shows number of deaths averted per million people vaccinated. And then on the right, it shows medical impoverishment cases averted, thousands, which is the amount of hospitalizations that are averted, which added up to about 25 million people. All in just the next 14 years, by the way. So let's talk about Emily's story. So there was a woman named Emily who just had a newborn baby. And she was given the choice to give her baby the Tdap vaccine or not. She said, no, I don't want to give my baby this vaccine, right? So then her child turned 5 weeks old and she actually got a disease named pertussis, which is a whooping cough, and it could be prevented by the Tdap vaccine. Her child was coughing a lot and she was barely able to breathe, so she had to send her baby to the hospital where she spent weeks there, struggling to survive, as her lungs and heart was absolutely collapsing because her body was just so small and could not handle this virus itself. So thankfully, she recovered. However, she still has respiratory issues to this day. And Emily completely regrets not giving her child this vaccine. And she's actually an advocate for vaccines now because she doesn't want other parents to go through what she had to go through. So on the right, you can see a picture of Emily when she was in the hospital. And she has tubes going up her nose and her mouth, and she's just absolutely pale. It's absolutely heartbreaking. So number two, vaccine mandates violate civil liberties. So a lot of people believe that they have the right to choose what they get to put inside of their bodies, and that they have the freedom of choice. So as you can see from the bottom, there are images of protests in America by anti-vaxxers saying that I call my own shots, no to mandatory vaccine, and my body, my choice. And it makes sense, right? You get to choose what you want to put in your bodies or not. And this actually was a big deal in 1905, which is over 100 years ago. So we actually developed the smallpox vaccine, right? And it was a terrible disease back then. And a lot of states, they implemented vaccine laws and they forced people to get these vaccines. However, a man named Jacobson refused to get the shot. He said, oh, it violates my civil liberties and it's completely oppressive. I don't want to get the shot. So he sued the state. And the Supreme Court actually ruled in favor of the state and Madison. And Jacobson lost this case because they said that the vaccine mandates were lawful and constitutional because the vaccines were deemed as reasonable and safe. They went through a large FDA approval process and tested it on people before they released it, right? Just like how we had today before the COVID-19 vaccine was actually released, people were tested, and there was a large sample size of 30,000 people had to get FDA approved, and yeah, it was safe. So also, harming others is not a right. So in this quote by Cody and Mokti, it says that vaccines are a justifiable intrusion on autonomy and bodily integrity. That may sound ominous because we all have the fundamental right to bodily integrity and to make our own healthcare decisions, but these rights are not absolute. They do not include the right to inflict harm on others. So this quote is saying that yes, we do have the right to put what we want into our bodies. However, when it comes to vaccines, what we put in our bodies matters because if we don't, then we will be spreading the disease and harming others, possibly causing death to them, right? And that is illegal. That is not allowed. So let's talk about free speech, right? So if I were to say, oh, I'm gonna bomb someplace, I have a bomb under the next plane takeoff, I tweet it. That's considered as a bomb threat, right? So I end up in jail. So just like with vaccines, free speech has an extent to it. If you're going to harm others or incite violence to others, you will get arrested. Just how if you're going to spread disease to others knowingly, then you will be arrested or it will be illegal. So vaccines are just better than lockdowns. So there are two options to save lives. So number one, lockdowns. So as you can see, in Shanghai, there was a huge lockdown in China, and people were forced to stay inside their homes. So the economy was crippling. People were starving at home, and a lot of people actually died from hunger. They're not allowed to step out of their houses, and mental health was a big issue. And then when you saw in America, there were vaccines that were released for COVID-19, and you saw a huge drop in deaths, huge drop in hospitalizations. People were living life normally. The vaccines were just incredible, and the economy was perfect. And unemployment dropped. All these great things happened, and people would not have to wear masks, and everything was normal again, right? So vaccines are just better than lockdowns. Just how it is. If you want to save lives during a pandemic. So if you're really against vaccines still, then how about this? So number three, vaccines eradicate disease forever. So if you get vaccinated now, then everybody will be immune from the disease, right? The disease has nowhere to go. The, the disease disappears, and future generations, your children, your grandchildren, will not have to get vaccinated. Right? This is what you wanted, right? You don't want to get vaccines, so just get one for your children to not get one. Easily, as you can see from this meme right here, it says the choices that we make now will affect our future generations. Right? So I brushed over herd immunity a little bit earlier. So let's get a little more in depth about this, right? So in this quote, it says that herd immunity or community immunity occurs when a high percentage of the community is immune to disease through vaccination and slash or prior illness, making the spread of the disease from person to person unlikely. Even individuals not vaccinated, such as newborns and the immunocompromised, are offered some protection because the disease has little opportunity to spread within the community. So this graphic is a perfect representation of what the quote is saying. So as you can see, at the 0% vaccinated rate, there's a lot of red. Those are the amount of people that get the disease, they contract it. And on the bottom right, you see the percent vaccinated, 95% of the population. And there's a bunch of yellow. No one's getting the disease. And the disease having a hard time to spread. Because when a disease does not have a host, they cannot survive, right? So that means in the future, we'll not have to deal with that virus ever again. So, okay, if you don't believe the scientific term herd immunity, which is proven, we will talk about complete evidence from the past that we have implemented. So, according to the CDC, a disease is categorized as eliminated when it is no longer in a specific region. Measles, rubella, mumps, diphtheria, and polio have all been eliminated in the US, largely due to the introduction of vaccination programs in the United States in the 1970s. Right, so as you can see from this graph right here, on the left right here, it shows the case rates of measles in USA. And there's a large amount of cases until around the 1970s, 1960s, right? This is when the vaccination programs were hitting. See a huge drop and plateau, and now we don't even have any more cases with it. Same thing with polio. By around the 1960s or 1970s, the disease is completely dropped. It's sunk. The disease is completely gone now in 2019, right? So vaccinations should be required in America because number one, vaccines save lives. Number two, vaccine mandates violate civil liberties, which we proved to be incorrect. And number three, vaccines eradicate diseases forever. So let's push for vaccination laws. Think about your family, your friends, your coworkers, etc. You can save their lives with one shot. Continue to push Congress to implement more vaccine mandates and protect the ones you love. You don't want to realize this after your loved ones are affected by life-threatening diseases. Please, 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 push for change. So thank you all for listening to my amazing speech, and here's my works cited, and bye.